All right. First up, thank you so much for joining my session. Many thanks to Ben and William for organizing this entire event. And a special thanks to Jess Pomfret, who was my mentor during creating this session and helped me out with a lot of stuff. She's really awesome, and I'm really glad that she helped me out. Today I'm going to talk about I'm going to present you the session that I was hoping I would have when I started out as a DBA. There are a few things we're going to cover today. I've made them the obligatory bullet points. Well, we'll catch them one by one as we go along. First up, to introduce myself, my name is Reitse Eskens. It's a difficult name for anyone inside or outside the Netherlands. Most people get it wrong. Reason I'm here is because I really love my DBA job, and what I love more is sharing knowledge. I've got some certifications. Yeah, well, some people just say you like to take exams, which is also true. If you want to reach me, the easiest way is through Twitter. You can find me on @2meterdba, and the 2 meter part is because I am 2 meters tall. There's some equivalent in feet and inches and stuff. I still haven't figured out that one. Maybe Aaron knows it by heart, but I still don't. I need to introduce myself, and the way to introduce myself is I'm going to tell you how I got here. In 2006, I started a job at the government, at a small unit of the government, small office, and really at the bottom of the ladder. We were receiving mail, putting stamps on it, checking if everything that came in from farmers was complete, correct, and could be processed. This office was mostly because we needed to check the mail when it came in, if it was complete, but also I found out later, was a bit of a way to scout talent. What we did, what that manager did, was check out, all right, who really wants to work, who's just in here for the money, and who can do maybe anything more. I got there. And I stayed there for a while, and I grew through a number of jobs. And in the end, I suddenly got working with databases. And not just a database, I got working with Oracle. And I knew absolutely nothing about Oracle. Well, I knew how to create a query because somebody told me you need to type in select and then the name of the column and the name of the table, and you'll get the result on your screen. Congratulations, you know how to query on Oracle, go. But I thought that's not everything. I can't imagine that that's all a database can do. So I bought a book on Oracle and started working through it at home to try and find out what I could do with Oracle. But the only thing I was learning at that moment was how to write queries, because it hardly said anything about Oracle other than how to install it. But I got into it and started liking it more and more. But the job at the government ended. So I had to go somewhere else. In 2011, I switched to a company called Axians, still my current employer. It's a European IT company, and the business unit I'm working in is doing a lot of stuff with business intelligence, ETL, reporting, things like that. And I got there on the first day. I had one of my co-workers who found out I knew something about Oracle, and started telling me about the things they were doing on Oracle. And I could not follow him because he's really smart and I'm not really good at Oracle. The second day, luckily, somebody came around and said, well, we've got another database. And I thought, what other database? Because databases are Oracle. Wrong. There was another database called Microsoft SQL Server. And the main positive point about SQL Server was it has a GUI, so I could see what I was doing instead of looking at a blinking cursor and hoping I was doing the right things. So I got into that, and I talked with a few co-workers at the time, and mostly they were just installing the SQL Server, next, finish, we've got a working database, and we go on. And if we want to change things or don't understand it, we either go to the customer or ask someone from a different part of the company who might know more about the database. That didn't work for me. I want to know what I'm doing. I want to know why I'm doing stuff and how I can improve stuff. So I started digging into all kinds of documentation, trying to find out what's working, how things are working, etc. Leading to all the certifications and GSA and CSE or things like that. Now, the fact that I've got the certification doesn't mean I've got the knowledge. It means I've seen the stuff. I've seen what Microsoft thinks it should do. But then you've got to do the stuff yourself. There is no substitute for experience. So if you are starting DBA and you're finding things hard, it's natural because you're missing the experience right now. That's okay. Experience will come at some time. You need to practice, you need to try things out. Best thing I did was just install Developer Edition on my home computer and try things out. Sometimes leading to my computer crashing, but that's a whole different story. This year, I suddenly got into, or read about new styles of data, and I thought, well, let's give it a try. A few days before the deadline, I submitted my session, thinking, well, this might work, and if it doesn't work, at least I know the process of submitting to an event. And I got selected, so now I had to tell my story. I don't know what the future will bring, and frankly, I don't really mind because I'm not really looking to the future to a specific goal, other than I hope to keep sharing knowledge. All right, enough about me. Story was long enough. First thing, when you're going to, or when you're at a new job, you need to know who you're going to talk to. I think there are three sets of people you need to talk to. The first set are the DBAs. Hopefully they're around in your new job. The DBAs will tell you, when you ask them the right way, what they are doing. If you ask them what they're proud of, they'll probably come up with some kind of a huge stored procedure or a user-defined function or a table function or whatever. But make sure you get a good report with them. You can talk with them and get them to share their knowledge with you, because you're in this together. If you're alone and there are no other DBAs to talk to, you really, you've got a hard job ahead of you. But talk to the DBAs because they know the databases you've got. They know if there are issues, if there are what the importance is of specific databases. Maybe there's a database that's used once a week, and if it's offline for most of the week, it doesn't matter because it's used only once a week. But on your own, you're not going to find that out, or you're going to find out the hard way. Maybe a database is mission critical, and the RPO and RTO times, recovery point objective and recovery time objective, are really, I would say, small, but you're not allowed to lose a lot of data, preferably none, and it should be up 7 or 8 nines, 99.99999% of the time. That again, you're not going to find out if you're not going to ask or talk to people. Second thing you need to talk to, or second thing that's not really nice, second set of people you need to talk to are the users. You don't need to talk to all the users, but select a few ones, maybe key users or whatever, because they've got expectations of their application. And their expectation of availability of the application or speed or whatever, performance, things like that, in the end, they might be your responsibility. But you need to know who those users are, what they are expecting. And if there's a problem, you need to know that the users can find you, because you don't want users to go to their manager goes to your manager, and your manager goes to you. Then there are all kinds of people involved. They've all got an opinion about things, and it takes a lot of time before you get to the point, the core of the problem. But when you talk directly to the user, maybe even share screens, you can quickly find out where a problem may be. Users are key usually for your application. Last group of people are management, because management mostly won't use the core application, but they're the ones who set up things like your RPO and RTO targets. You need to know why they're set up this way, what they're expecting, Are they expecting that you're some kind of 24/7 service maybe? If they're expecting that you're always online, that you're always available, maybe it's time to talk to them and explain them. Well, I've got a private life. I've got a weekend sometimes. You need to make sure everyone's on the same page about expectations. All right. Now, where do you get good information? There is a lot of information online you can find. There's a lot of good information. Sometimes there's a bit of misleading information, and it's really hard, especially when you're starting, to find out what's good and what's not. First thing I'm going to right now is Twitter. Twitter is my main starting point nowadays if I've got a quick question. And it's really a really quick way of getting information, getting questions answered. I've got 2 examples for that. First one, firstly, I should say there are 2 hashtags that will improve the way people will see your question. Those are the hashtag SQL family and the hashtag SQL help. SQL help is specifically aimed for your SQL questions. There's been a debate lately what it should contain, but for me, it's still about SQL Server. SQL family is anyone working with SQL Server. Regarding Twitter, my examples. First one, a few weeks ago, I had a nasty issue where I couldn't connect Azure Data Factory to Azure Data Lake. And I couldn't find out why or in what way I could make a secure connection with app registration, and I just couldn't get it to work. So I asked on Twitter with the hashtag SQL help, and within 5 minutes I got a reply from someone who said, well, I've got a neat trick for you. It's a bit long to discuss it on Twitter, but we'll set up a one-on-one session and I'll show you. Long story short, within an hour, I had a working solution for my problem. And I would never have been able to find a solution to the problem if I went Googling for it, because I didn't exactly know what to Google for. Maybe I could find it now. I'm still not sure, but some things are less well documented, let's put it that way. The second one is, second example I want to give you is, I posted something on Twitter about building my session and doing some demos. And before I knew it, a complete discussion burst out between a lot of experienced presenters what to do with your demo. Should you run them on Azure, on your local machine? Should you pre-record them? All kinds of options were mentioned. It was really cool to see that everyone had a different opinion, but no opinion was slagged off or said, well, that's wrong or whatever. Just was a nice opinion, and the people were nice to each other, and it was a good discussion, because I found, or at least I thought I knew what way I should prepare my demos. So that really helped. If you've got a question that needs a bit more context, and then you can initially put on Twitter, you can go to Slack. On Slack, there's a channel called the SQL Server Community, and within that channel, there are a lot of threads to specific subjects, where you can ask questions with, I don't know if you can pay screenshots, I think you can, but there's more room to discuss problems, and it's a bit more, well, I wouldn't say it's more structured, but you've got more room for explanation, because there's more room for, yeah, you're not limited to the Twitter number of characters. Now, if you need a query to check something on your server, or you want to, you've got a question about your server, why something is or isn't working, odds are you're going to end up on the site by Pinal Dave. I hope I'm pronouncing his name right. He's the owner of the SQLauthority.com site, and that site is loaded, really loaded with a lot of really cool but simple scripts that help you along. So if you've got questions about something, if you want to know how to query some dynamic management view, the odds are you're going to end up on his site. You've got an explanation, what it's showing, how it's working. It's really cool. Another one of the big names when you're looking at sites is Brent Oza. Brent Oza has his own site, brentoza.com. It's more aimed at performance tuning. When you get you might get an offer for the first responder kit. It's a free tool. I'll show you that one later. And it's really cool to see what's. It's a really good site to get information about database tuning and why things work the way they work. Yeah, he's got a lot of free videos on YouTube right now, where he's explaining all kinds of stuff, and he's got a real funny and good one about the tuning advisor, where he's dressed up as Clippy. Another site, SQLskills.com. It's a site I'm using more for wait statistics when I need to find out why my server is waiting. I'm catching or recording the wait statistics. I'll show you that one later in the session. But sometimes you need to know, all right, what's this wait statistic telling me? Because sometimes the names of the statistics can be a bit confusing, and you need a bit of an explanation. And when you check out the Microsoft documentation, it's not really very well documented, in my personal opinion. So the SQL Skills site really helps. All right, those are the a few bases for good information. There's a lot more out there, but if I would talk about that, I would fill 1 hour easily. Before I go on, any questions so far?
You're good.
All right. Now, when you're working with a database environment, you need tools, and there are a few tools. I want to leave with you, which you should check out. First one is the Ola Hallengren scripts. It's a maintenance solution, and it's got 4 pillars, if you will: backups, indexes, statistics, and integrity checks. The order I've put them in, well, you can discuss it if it's in the order of importance or not. Backups, for me, are the most important part of a database, because when a database goes down for some reason, you need to be able to restore a backup. And you have to know, what's my latest backup? This script will help you create backups, manage them, and find them. Another thing that's really important are integrity checks, because if you've got some kind of corruption on your database, you're gone. Sooner or later, you're going to hit that corruption, and if you're hitting it, usually you're too late. What you want to do is check your database for corruption, in my personal opinion, daily. Some people say, well, once a week is good enough. Yeah, maybe I'm a bit of a control freak, but I like to check it daily to make sure my database is in good order, it's running, there are no weird issues going on. Because if you find corruption early, it's less difficult to fix it, because if you're late and it's spreading over your entire database, there comes a point where all you can do is do a complete restore and hope you haven't lost all that much of data. Now, there's a big debate on index and statistics maintenance. My personal view is index maintenance can be done once a week, but statistics, I need to do them daily. And this tool will help you out with the optimal settings for these checks, or this maintenance, I should say. Index maintenance, I'm doing it weekly. I'm just checking out if there's a fragmentation level above 15%, I think, and then it starts to reorganize, and if it's above 30% or something like that, it starts to rebuild. Statistics. If you joined early, I talked to Erin about a blog she wrote where she's showing a good parameter where statistics only get updated when there's enough change, essentially, in the data. I haven't included the link in my slide deck. Before I'll publish the slide deck, I will add a link to that blog, because it really saved me a lot of time. And it gives a good example on how to use the Ola Hallengren solution. Now, if you're starting out as a DBA, for me personally, I think I'm convinced you need to learn PowerShell. Because when you learn PowerShell, at least the basics, you can use two awesome tools, DBA Tools and DBA Checks. The DBA Tools is a module, open sourced, headed by Chrissy Lemaire. And all those modules will help you manage and maintain your SQL Server estate. Everything that's hard, everything that's repetitive, there's commandlet for it. They are really easy to use. And the reason they're easy to use is because they're very well documented. If you've got a commandlet, you find it. There's a website for it, dbatools.io. You can find a commandlet, including the explanation what it's doing and examples. So it makes it really easy to use. A kind of submodule within the DBA tools are the DBA checks. I'm sorry. And the DBA checks are a module for routine checks on your server estate. For example, it checks if the latest run of all your agent jobs has been successful or not. It checks the latest date of your backups, and if it's outside a set parameter, say 1 week. So if your latest backup is older than 1 week, it will give you a heads up if you run the check. You don't have to log in on every server to check all those things. You need one management server, and you can check all the SQL servers as long as you can connect to them. If you can't, there's another solution for that. I'll come to that later. Finally, with the DBA checks, there's a Power BI report. I think it's been there for about a year now. Rob Sewell did a really cool session on that. He's the creator on DBA checks, by the way. I should have mentioned that. And yeah, it's really cool. It gives a good overview of your environment. The first responder kit. It's made by Brent Oza. It's I think it's open source now. You can find it on GitHub as well. It gives you it's a number of stored procedures or scripts to get an overview of the server you're looking at. That's really cool, because when you're first time you get a new server, you have no idea what it is. Yeah, it's a SQL server, it's got databases, but is anything happening there? You don't know. Run this script, and you get the first overview of stuff that's happening there. It's got advice to where you focus your attention, because it's ordered in priority or severity, or however you want to call it. If you got a priority 1 or a severity 1, you know where to look at. If you only get to 200s, you're good. I've never seen those. A few checks you can run with the first responder kit will give you a kind of solution script. If you copy those scripts and run them without checking them, they will fail. And that's on purpose, because Brent doesn't want you to just run his solution scripts, because, well, they're generated and you don't know what they're going, in the end, you don't know how they're going to fit in your complete database or database estate. So what you need to do is you need to copy them and check what's in it. You need to think about it, check it with the rest of your environment, edit the scripts, and then you can run them. But you need to think about it. They're really, really good. Now, one of the tools I'm using quite often, and I still can't understand it's free, because it's a really, really good tool. It's a SentryOne Plan Explorer. It's a free tooling for tuning. It gives you an idea on how to add or modify indexes with a graphical interface, and it will tell you, well, if you change this index, the usage for this query or the performance boost will be X% or X value. But one of the other things that's quite recent is that it shows an animated deadlock diagram. I'll demo that one later, and it's really that way it's easier to check out what's happening with deadlocks than it is to try and look at the deadlock diagram you get in a Management Studio, because it's just harder to read, in my opinion. Now, all this tooling you're using to script things out, it's nice to have some kind of script editor. My personal favorite is Visual Studio Code. It's a free code editor. It's got a lot of plugins. It's got a Git integration, which means you can get a version history of your scripts. You can share them easily with other people through Git. And because of the plugins, it's not just the regular Visual Studio Code you might, or Visual Studio stuff you've seen with C# or .NET stuff. It's got PowerShell, Terraform, Azure command line integration. Anything you're looking for, there's a plugin for it, and it just runs. It's really cool. One of the newer applications to manage your database estate is Azure Data Studio, and it's called Azure Data Studio, but remember, it also works on your on-premises servers. Personally, I think it's a bit of a lightweight version to SSMS, because doing management on your SQL server is way harder because it misses the GUI for that part. It's really good at running queries. It gives you a bit of a graphical overview of your server, but most of the best parts of Azure Data Studio are notebooks. Rob Sewell has an excellent session on notebooks and your DBA job in, I think I could say it that way. Jupyter notebooks are really cool. I'm going to show you a small demo on those as well. And finally, quite new one is Windows Terminal. You can check it out from the Windows Store. It looks a bit like PowerShell, but when you start it up, it gets or it loads, I think, the most recent version of PowerShell. But if you want to use an older version, if it's installed on your machine, you can use that one as well. You can add a tab for your regular command prompt, and it's got an Azure integration. When you start that one up, you just get a key. That key you need to get to the Azure portal. Make sure that key gets logged there, and from that moment on, you don't need the Azure portal anymore, but you can do all your stuff through the Windows Terminal that you need to do on Azure. That's really, really cool. Questions so far?
You're still good.
Ah, cool.
People are wrapped. They're just zoned in. You're good.
Cool. Then it's time to move to my first demo. Oh. And I'm going to switch to my management server. Right here, I'm on a management server I've created in Azure. And I'm running the Visual Studio Code interface. Now, if you want to know what kind of or what version of PowerShell you're using, you can use the variable PS version table. I'm pressing F8, and I'm seeing 703. That's one of the latest versions of PowerShell. Now, I've talked about DBA Tools a bit earlier, and I want to install them. If I'm going to install module DBA Tools, I've already installed those because I don't want to bore you with some waiting screen. It's going to tell you that the repository it's coming from is not safe. And if you want to know if it's safe, DBA Tools has a page dedicated to this subject. It's telling you it's secure, and it's telling you why it is secure. You can read all about it on this page. If you've installed the module, you need to import the module. So import module, DBA Tools, import module, DBA checks, and you're good to go. Both modules are now available for you. Now, if you've been working with PowerShell, you know PowerShell is quite good with local variables. What I'm doing here is I'm creating a variable for my servers. I've got 3 servers. And those of you who are really sharp-eyed are seeing they're all on the same physical server. It's just a limitation on my side. I'm creating a password by putting it in plain text, but converting it into a secure string. And this password I'm using to create my credential. These 3 variables, or 2 actually, are now usable within my current session. So now I can check out what I can do with DBA Tools. I told you DBA Tools has got a lot of commands. This is the page where all the commands are listed. There are over 500 right now. And if I want to do something with Ola Hallengren, I start typing Ola. And it should give me at least 3 commandlets that are connected to the Ola Hallengren. In this case, I'm interested in the install DBA Maintenance Solution. And here you can see the documentation. It's got syntax, examples, everything you need. So let's test it out. I'm going to install my DBA Maintenance Solution, the Ola Hallengren scripts, on the servers in my server list. These 3 servers with my SQL credential. It's created here. And I'm going to replace the existing, so I'm sure I'm getting the latest and greatest version. Now, if you're going to do this via SSMS, you need to download the code and you need to do all kinds of stuff. And right here it's already done because I'm getting success. And there's been something weird in my GUI of Visual Code today. For some reason, this screen freezes or something like that. But in the end, I get the result. Success has been installed. To control the scripts, you need to do a bit of work, because when you get the default jobs, and let's see if they're here. Oh, they're gone. The default jobs by Ola are cool, but they're not really intuitive, and you need to do some stuff with them. So what I'm doing, or what I've done, I'm not in the correct scripts. I need this one. I've created my own DB admin database, and I've created my OHA management table. This table contains an identity on ID, the name of the database, and if it should be daily indexed. Daily index for me is daily index maintenance, or if it should have weekly index maintenance. Should have a daily full backup, week full backup, maybe a daily incremental backup. Should it have log backups, daily statistics, weekly statistics? Should it have a weekly or daily integrity check, and the server name? When I create this table, there it is. It should get filled because we need data. And to get data, I've created a job. I'll create the job first because it's easier to read, I think. When you've got the job in here. I hope everyone can read this because zooming in this part is a bit harder. My job contains starts with 2 steps. First step is I'm going to merge the Ola Hallengren script or my table with the names I get from my sister databases. What this means, every time I get a new database, it gets automatically added to my management table. So I don't have to worry about people adding or removing databases, because if someone removes the database, it gets deleted. I know I'm using the merge data command. Some people don't like that one. For this kind of work, it really it works fine. Second part is I'm going to check on recovery model, because some databases are in the full recovery model, and if they are, I want a log backup. So in this query, I'm going to set the log backup to 0, and then I'm going to update it to 1 if the database is not in simple recovery mode. and I'm going to skip master model and tempdb, because even though those may be well, not in full recovery mode, I don't need log backups of those databases. All right. So when I run this job, I'm going to start it. It's going to get the information, and it's done. When I get the data, I've got my master tempdb model MSDB default. Again, in weekly index maintenance, I'm going to give them a daily full backup. I'm going to take the week full backup as well. And I'm going to check their integrity daily. There's one database, the DB admin database, is getting a log backup as well. And that's because this database is running in full recovery model. So this one will get a log backup. Now this is just my data set, essentially. Before I forget, the reason I'm including the server name, I'm using, for clients of ours, I'm using this on multiple servers, and I'm gathering all the data in one report, and it's quite handy to know what server you're looking at. So I included the server name here, so you don't have to add it in your query when you get the information. Okay. What I need to do is I need to create a job that in the end will run the backups on the databases I want them to run. All right. So I'm creating a job that will create my daily full backup. This job will have one step, and in this step is going to list the databases from my OH management table, where the daily full backup equals 1. So every database that needs a daily full backup will be here. If there are no databases for the daily full backup, which would be weird, it will print just a message, no database has been selected. Else, it will execute the database backup script from OLA for the databases that are contained in this database list that's been generated here. For me, this is giving me a bit more flexibility in using the scripts by OLA. All right. Now, something else, when you're running into trouble, you need to use some kind of diagnostic script. Glenn Allen Berry has written a really cool, extensive diagnostic script or set of scripts. But you're not always allowed to run those scripts on the machine that's into problems or in trouble. Sometimes you're just not allowed to log in on that server. If you need the information, what you can do is go to this link. I will share this link with the code after the session. When you follow this link, you'll get a good explanation by Spaghetti DBA, also known as Gianluca Sartori, who will tell you how to generate a Jupyter notebook for these diagnostic queries. When you've got this, you can open the file. And the cool thing about this is that it will save the results. Here's one I prepared earlier. I'll open the file. I will get it. It will load. A few days ago, I ran this query just to get the server name and the version. It's right here. It's saved within the Jupyter notebook, and I can reuse it. I did a check on my course, etc., etc. The document itself is quite large. There are a lot of things in there, but it's really easy if you can't reach a server. Maybe you've got a client that's got a problem, and once you're advised, you can just send the notebook, tell them to run it in Azure Data Studio, and send it back with the results, and you've got a lot of data to start your troubleshooting. All they need, all they need is Azure Data Studio. This is really, really cool, I think. All right. Now, I told you something about a toolkit from brand OSA. And again, same thing as the OLED solutions. You can install the DBA First Responder Kit just from the command line to all the servers with your credential. I'm pushing it to the master database. You can change the database if you want. And if I run it, it'll take a few seconds and it will be installed on 3 servers. It'll give a nice overview. Now there were some yellow lines flashing by. And there's a reason for those. I'll try to find them. I hope you can read it because yellow on white isn't exactly the best contrast. Right here, it's telling you that on my 2012 instance, which you might be using still because most demos are going on a 2019 environment, but in the real world, we're still 2012, 2014, 2016, 2008, maybe even. Right here, it's telling you you're on an old server. The SP Blitz query store procedure will not work here, so we're not going to install it. You only get the procedures that will work on your server. Easy as that. But now you want results because, well, we've installed the first responder kit. You want to know what's happening. So right now I'm going to start this query and it will check my service and give me some information. It will take a few seconds to get all the information together, but usually they're quite quick. Again, I'm going to my server list. There's 3 servers in my estate with my fixed credential. And I'm going to execute my SP Blitz. That's the first script you should use to get a bit of information about your environment. And I'm going to check on I want to show my server info as well. All right, I've got my results. And I can see my backup has not been performed recently. Last backup, never. All my databases have not been backed up. I'm sorry. I've got a log file that has not been backed up. I have a few missing CheckDB. I've missed out on performing my CheckDB integrity checks. Right here, I've got my priority 1 things. Now I need to scroll down because this script gives us information by server. So first one was my first server in my list. This one is the second server. Again, I've got a few priorities that I need to check right now. Again, backups and CheckDB. I've got file configuration things, reliability stuff, all good stuff like this. This will give you a good view of what your instance is all about. Now, if you want to check something, if you want to do just one check, I should say it like that, you've got the DBA checks. This one, this check, and I'll run it because it will take a bit of time. We'll again go to your service and do a check on your last good CheckDB, and it will show the ones that failed, because that's what we're mostly interested in. So it's going to run against my server and check out, well, have I been doing my CheckDBs lately and how are they? This will run for a few seconds. It will tell me in the end, hopefully the same what my SP Blitz script told me. And that will be that I need to do some checks. Sometimes it's a bit quicker, sometimes a bit slower. It's I think it's a network thing. There we go. Right here, I got a lot of red stuff, and that's because it's a PowerShell message. And essentially, it's telling me that my last good CheckDB should be less than 7 days old, and it's not. It's older than 7 days, and I should do my CheckDBs. All right. There are a lot of more text. By the way, you can find the documentation online as well. Last thing I want to show you are deadlocks, because deadlocks, and I should start right here. Is my deadlock graph that's still here? No, oh well, never mind. Deadlocks are hard to read because things like this, I don't know exactly where things start. In the Century Run Plan Explorer, there's a play button. If I start to run it, first query, second query, third one, fourth, fifth, there we go. This is where my deadlock suddenly came to play. Deadlocks are hard, no matter how experienced you are or how much you've looked at them. Deadlocks are hard, but sometimes it helps if you can just play it. If it's going too fast, you can slow the speed down to 1/4, 25%. It will be way slower. It will just slowly run you through all the steps that it's done. And in the end, you can find out where the deadlock started. Okay. Well, this one will run also without me. So I'm going back to my presentation. It's good that it's exactly at the right point. This is where I wanted to be. Any questions so far?
There is one question, which is how much time do you spend every day reading blogs and newsletters?
If it's from a manager, I'm going to say it's not all that much. Because I know my manager is watching today. Now I do spend time reading blogs, and it's I think about 1 hour a day, something like that. And mainly that's because I'm not really skilled yet at filtering all the information and checking out which ones I should really read and which ones are more fun. But I do spend a lot of time reading them.
I did too.
I think it's the only way to get the cool information.
It is. I mean, because you can't test everything, right?
Nope. No, it's impossible.
Yeah. Okay, that was it.
All right, cool. Now, sometimes you need to know what your instance is doing. First thing you need to look at are wait statistics. And wait statistics are, like deadlocks, really hard. If I can give you one tip, get this book by Enrico van der Laar. He's written, I would say easily readable, but it's not entirely true because it's quite technical, but it's you can read it. It's good to follow. He's got a lot of examples on what certain wait statistics mean and how to initiate them. He's got warnings as well that you shouldn't all run his scripts on a production server. And there's a good reason why you shouldn't. One of the wait statistics is called a thread pool, which means that your server is running out of threads to run processes. If you run it on a production server, your production server will go down. And you don't want that, unless you're testing something out, like a restore or a alerting system. Second script, if you want to know what's happening on your server right now, you can use the script who is active, and a script by Adam Mechanic. Really full of all kinds of details on what your server is doing right now. It captures execution plans if you want a lot of stuff. I'll show you to you in a minute. And the last one is something that I found really interesting is looking at disk latency. Now, disk latency is something special because SQL Server is quite happy to tell you it's got a high disk latency, but sometimes it's not disk latency. Sometimes there's something else happening along the way. And if you go into a SAN admin and tell him your disks are slow, chances are he'll laugh at you, turn around and walk away. And that's not what you want. What you want is that you've got a problem. You need to look at it with your SAN admin where the problem originates. Because sometimes, chances are, sometimes a disk can be slow. It can happen. But what happens more is that there's something in the way that lets SQL Server think that their disks are slow, but something else is really happening. There's something called delayed acknowledgement, I think it's called in VMware, where the VMware system is just waiting around a bit before it says, yeah, we've committed the data to disk. SQL says, I've got disk latency. it's not disk latency. The disks are quick enough, but the system that's running it is a bit slower. But you need to find out how you can monitor read and write latency. The link I've provided will give you a good start to get into that. I did not prepare a demo for this one because my machine, my demo machines are running all on SSDs, and well, the SSDs are quick enough to not show any latency that's really detectable. So back to my demo. Because I want to know who is active on my. All right. Gonna look at the wait stats first. For the wait stats, and I've created. I will add the scripts to collect them as well in my script set. The wait stats I'm collecting right now in a job. This job I've created, get wait statistics, runs every 5 minutes and collects the wait statistics that have been happening in the last 5 minutes. Because if you look at wait statistics from the activity monitor, what you'll get is the resource waits. So from the startup of your server. Now, because this is a demo machine and it hasn't been running all that long, things I did are quite low. But remember, these waits, they're aggregated. That's first. You got backup, buffer IO, buffer ledge. I think there are 300 or so wait types right now. They're aggregated, and they're from the moment the instance started. So if you want to know why a certain query went slow, these won't help you. But if you're looking at the table, I'm going to select the top 1,000 rows. You'll get the day, the month, the year, the hour, and the minute of the registration, and the wait time, and the waiting task, and the signal wait time for that moment. This will give you a good pointer why a specific query might be slow. Because if you've got a query and it's got all of a sudden your query is slow and you see in backup, it's got a huge number here, your query was slow because your database was busy with the backup. When your database is going into backup, other queries have to wait, or will at least suffer from performance degradation. So monitoring these wait stats is essential. You'll collect a lot of data. So what you need to be aware of is sometimes just to clean up your table a bit. I'm cleaning it every day, once a day, and I'll keep a history of about 2 to 3 weeks, 2 or 3 weeks history in my tables, because sometimes people are quite slow to tell me, yeah, I had a query 3 days ago and it was a bit slow. Can you find out why? Well, if I'm just collecting 1 day of data and cleaning up after 1 day, I won't be able to tell you what happened 3 days ago. So I'm usually keeping a history about 2 or 3 weeks. And if I know there's there's an issue that will take a bit longer time to solve, I'll just copy the database to still or cold storage to make sure nobody touches it anymore. All right. If I want who is active, I can install DBA who is active again on all my servers. And then I can just check, all right, what's happening? Oh no, that was the wrong button. I just want this one. Yeah. Lesson learned today, if you hit F5, it'll start all the scripts. And that's something I don't want right now, but let's run it into this one. That's the Azure environment. Every once in a while, I'll do this, hit the wrong button, and something will immediately pop up and do something I didn't want. Okay. Right now, I've got one process running on my server. It's got to wait for a delay. I got the login name, got wait info. It's just waiting. It's apparently recording something. I've got the duration of the query. I can see if it's blocking something, what it's doing on tempdb, reads, writes. These are the defaults that you get. Now, if you want to know what it will monitor, you can run this. If you are executing who is active with the parameter add help equals 1, it will give you all the information of everything it can monitor and what it means. So this is the documentation locally for your procedure. I'm logging my data to a table because I want to be able to check out what's been happening in the past. Because I'm not going to check this procedure every minute at night and somewhere store it. I want to run it at night as well because that's when my ETL processes are running. I want to know what's happening and want to be able to look back on it. So I've created a table, and if you want to know how to log who is active to a table, there's an excellent link by Brent Oza, logging activity using SP who is active take 2. You get this table. I'm going to select data. And in this case, I've got the session ID, I've got the text, SQL text, what's happening, the command, who was logging in, and all kinds of information, including execution plans. I can click on it. In this case, it's just a wait for, so one object, but it will give you the execution plan at runtime, which is really cool. All right. My final, I really should practice this more.
I've done the same thing so many times.
I hate myself. I've done it twice today.
It's okay. You're good.
All right. Finally, I'm about to stop talking. You've made it to the end of my session. Good on you. Remember, there are a lot of tools available to help you. Really a lot of tools. Check them out. If you are not sure if it's a good tool, ask the question on Twitter, on Slack. People will help you and tell you if it's a good tool or not. There are many, many, many people willing to help you, really. Again, use Twitter, use Slack, use all the possibilities there are, because there are a lot of people really willing to help you. Thank you for listening. Any questions?
There's none in the queue. Let's wait and see if any come in. I have a question, actually, not necessarily that's technical, but there's so much I feel like you have to figure out over time. So when you were putting this session together, like, how did you figure out even what you wanted to include or where you were gonna go?
Oh, that's a good question. I started out with the things that I found in the last 5 years of my career.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought, I wish I knew about these earlier. And there are many more tools that I wish I knew about. But personally, for me, these tools were really standing out and are also relevant for the future. Things like PowerShell, for me, I think that will be a really large part of the future for the DBA, because the estates are growing so quickly. You can't do everything with a GUI. I saw a tweet from John Martin last week, who was busy creating a list of servers in his SSMS. And SSMS just crashed out because there were too many.
I saw that. Yep.
Yeah. Things like that. I think, yeah, well, if you're going this way, maybe running PowerShell is easier.
Right. So you gave us a lot of tools, right? And a
Yep.
little bit in terms of resources, but in terms of like where you acquired your knowledge, how you acquired your knowledge, not about these tools per se, but like how SQL Server works. How am I going to troubleshoot this, right? How did that come to you?
99% experience, trying things out. As I said in the beginning, if you're going for certifications, I think you should do it because you learn a lot from it. But there's no substitute for experience, trying things out, failing at things. And when you're going to fail at things, make sure it's a demo environment or something at home.
Yep.
Not your production server. But that's the best way to learn and to find out what works and what doesn't work, and how a tool works as well. Because working with any tool, and you need to find your way around the tool.
Yeah,
I can show you the way I'm using a tool, but that might not work for you.
Right. It's a lot. Like I tell this to my kids all the time, right? Everybody starts at the beginning. Everybody starts with zero knowledge about whatever SQL Server, and you can't just read one book or one series of blog posts. Like it is time and work.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's it.
Yep.
There is a question in here. I swear I did not prompt this question. It says, do you use Query Store much?
I'm using it, but not a lot. And one of the reasons is that a lot of our clients are still running 2012, 2014 environments. And Query Store wasn't there yet. Right. The ones on 2016, I am using it, but I'm not really ashamed to admit it, but I have to admit I'm usually running it at the defaults because I've seen Query Store can take up a lot of data, or data space. So I'm still a bit the basic version of Query Store. And yeah, Query Store takes a little bit of time to get used to. And I don't know what you think about it, but I don't think it's really intuitive where you need to click and what you can see and what you have to do with it. Especially if you've got a lot of maintenance scripts running, they can overpower all the scripts you're really looking for.
That's a good point. Yeah, it takes a little bit to get used to, right? Again, it's a beginning. And it's a different UI, and then some things you can't get in the UI, and so you have to go to the underlying views to get that information. Yeah, but it's continually improving and evolving. Yeah. So.
Yeah, I can personally. I think it's not there yet. It's about a 0.8 version, in my opinion. It's not completely there yet, but I hope they'll finish it. So it will be really useful because I think it's got a lot of potential.